Today we are going to be converting fractions and decimals. So when converting fractions to decimals, a fraction can be converted to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So we have 3/4. 3/4. In 3/4 we know that 3 is our numerator and 4 is our denominator. So when we divide our numerator by our denominator, we are going to make sure that the n goes inside the house and the d is on the outside of the house. So we have 3 divided by 4. Of 3 divided by 4, we know that 4 cannot go into 3. So I'm going to put a 0 there. And I'm going to add a decimal, bring it up, and bring a 0 out here. And so now 4 can go into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. Bring it down and subtract. 28 minus 30 is 2. So I have leftovers, but I do not have remainders in 6th grade. So whenever I have a decimal, I need to add a 0 and bring it down. And we know that 4 can go into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20, and I will subtract. 20 minus 20 equals 0. So 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths. Moving on to problem number 1, we have 3/8. The 3 is our numerator, and the 8 is our denominator. We know that our numerator goes inside the house and our denominator goes on the outside of the house. And now we can divide 3 divided by 8. We know that 3 goes inside of the house and our 8 goes on the outside of the house. So 8 cannot go into 3. I'm going to bring a 0 up here, add a decimal, bring that decimal up, and add a 0 behind our 3. So now I know that 8 can go into 30 3 times. And 8 times 3 is 24. And I'm going to subtract 30 minus 24, and I get 6. I have leftover 6, but I cannot have remainders in 6th grade. So I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. And 8 can go into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. When I subtract 56 from 60, I will get 4. And I have 4 left over. I need to add a 0 and bring it down. 8 can go into 40 5 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And 40 minus 40 is 0. So that means I am done. And 3/8 is equivalent to 375 thousandths. And now I have 1 over 25. I know that 1 is my numerator and 25 is my denominator. And just a reminder that n goes inside of the house and our denominator goes outside of the house. So 1 divided by 25. And I know 25 cannot go into 1, and since I'm wanting to find a decimal, I'm going to add a decimal, bring it up, and add a 0. And I know 25 cannot go into 10, so I'm going to put a 0 here. 0 times 25 is 0, so I'm going to add another 0. And I know that 25 can go into 100 4 times. And 4 times 25 is 100. So 100 minus 100 equals 0. And 1/25 is equal to 4 hundredths. Alright, now when I solve number 3, I want to turn my fraction into a decimal. I know that 1 is my whole number. I have 1 whole here, and 4/5. 4 is my numerator, and 5 is my denominator. So for this problem, I know that 1 is already a whole number. I have whole numbers in my decimal, so I can add 1 over here and make a decimal. But I need to turn 4/5 into a decimal. So remembering that our numerator goes in the house and our denominator goes outside of the house, I'm going to divide 4 by 5. And I know that 5 cannot go into 4, so I'm adding a decimal, bringing it up, and adding a 0. And I know that 5 can go into 40 8 times, and 8 times 5 is 40. And 40 minus 40 is 0. So 4/5 as a fraction is equivalent to 8/10. And I already have 1 whole, so my answer is going to be 1 whole and 8/10. Don't forget about your whole number, please. And for number 4, I have 2 and 1/3. Well, I know that 2 is my whole numbers. So I have 2 wholes, right? And I have 1/3 as a fraction. So I have to turn my 1/3 into a fraction. So 1 is my numerator and 3 is my denominator. And we know that our numerator goes inside the house and our denominator goes outside of the house. And now I'm going to solve. So I have 1 divided by 3. And I know that 3 cannot go into 1, so I'm going to bring a 0, add a decimal, bring it up, and add another 0. And 3 can go into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And so I'm going to subtract. 10 minus 9 is 1. I have 1 left over, so I need to add a 0 and bring it down. And 3 goes into 10 3 times. So I'm going to put a 3 up here. 3 times 3 is 9. I will subtract, and 10 minus 9 is 1. So again, I have 1 left over, and I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. 3 goes into 10 3 times, and 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. I'm going to add another 0 and bring it down. And hopefully by now you guys are seeing that I have a pattern, and I keep ending up with 10, 10, 10. If we keep going, no matter how long we keep going, we are going to keep getting 10. This is what you call a repeating decimal. So one way that we like to represent a repeating decimal in math is to just put a line over that 3. That line above the 3 is going to show me that that 3 is just going to keep repeating forever and ever. So we have 2 and 3/10, but please remember that you put your line above it, so that means that there's just going to be a 3 forever and ever afterwards. All right, so if you guys will, please go ahead and do number 5 and number 6 by yourselves. Remembering that our numerator is divided by our denominator, and our numerator will go in the house and our denominator will go outside of the house.